Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Cannabis Day of Justice put on by all ex-incarcerated individuals. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Paul. So the first panel has to do with the pathways to freedom. Well, let me introduce myself. I'm the moderator, Travis Cullen. I spent 8 years in prison for weed. That's what got me here. Read a lot of books. All right, pathways to freedom. All right, so start off with an introduction. Craig.
Good morning or good afternoon, but my name is Craig Cecil, and in 2001, right before the events of September 11th, I was arrested for conspiring to distribute marijuana. My business repaired trucks for a company that used their trucks to haul marijuana. For that, I was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. I remained in federal prison for the next 19 years until on his last day in office, President Trump commuted my life sentence to time served. In the words of Ivanka Trump, who told me of that grant, she says, "You're being released because we believe that granting you your freedom, you will hit the street and you will do well. You will thrive on the street and outside of prison." I've done that since.
Chad.
I'm Chad Marks. At the age of 24, I was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison for a nonviolent drug crime. While in prison, I ended up becoming a jailhouse lawyer.
Yeah.
I wrote the first compassionate release motion in the country to win for a guy by the name of Conrado Cantu. I had told Cantu, look, I don't know, I think I'm right, but if you want to practice, we'll practice on your case. And we did that. And because of that, thousands and thousands of people have been released from prison, including myself. My 40-year sentence was reduced to 20. And I got out of prison about 4.5 years ago. And pretty much been trying to help as many people as I can. We also have a reentry house in my city that we started. We have 20 beds there for guys that are getting out of federal prison that have nowhere to go. So we've been clothing them, feeding them, and giving them a place to live.
Paul.
My name is Paul Free. 1994, I was sentenced to life for marijuana. And I got 2016, President Obama granted my clemency, knocked my life sentence down to 25 years and 4 months. Since I got out, I met a wonderful woman, and we get along really well. We have 17 acres in Ohio. I've got live deer 30 feet from my bedroom window, wild turkeys cruising around. I'm raising some turkeys and some quail and stuff. I'm going to let them just disappear. Rebuild. 1978, they had a big snowstorm there, and it killed all the quail. So
That's awesome.
I'm enjoying life.
Okay, so the reason you guys are up here is because you're all esteemed prison house lawyers. You know the law inside and out. The questions that we're going to be talking about, there's 5 categories. The first one is the clemency and the process, the clemency process and challenges. So each of y'all will have a chance to answer this. What does the clemency process look like, start to finish, and where do most people run into challenges?
The clemency system as it's set up now was actually set up under President Eisenhower in that, for instance, a person imprisoned would look at a grant of a commutation of sentence. That falls under the president's clemency power to change sentences or shorten sentences to free people that are serving sentences, and also the power to pardon somebody, meaning that it removes the conviction from their record. For a prisoner to apply for that, right now there's a system where you basically fill out a specific application to the Office of Pardon Attorney, which is a division of the Department of Justice right now. And there, unfortunately, the very prosecutors that prosecuted us get to discuss whether we deserve a grant of getting our sentence reduced or not. And based on what they determine out of that office, those applications get forwarded to the president. We are trying to change that process right now. I'm living proof that a better system does exist out there. I never applied for clemency. I never applied under President Trump. What happened is a whole lot of activists went and contacted the White House and people within the White House and advocated on my behalf. They fought for me, and they actually convinced President Trump to commute my sentence to time served. If you look at the website for the Office of Pardon Attorney, they're still scratching their heads because I never applied for clemency, but yet it was granted. But that also is proof that the individual activists out there who are trying to help prisoners can make a difference. They did for me. If not for the activists, I'd still be in prison. But that system, I'm hoping we can change the whole clemency system to make it more friendly to the prisoner. That since it's only the president's power to decide whether somebody should receive clemency or not, that whole review process ought to wholly belong to the president and his staff. And that's what we're fighting for, is bring that back into the White House, where the White House does the investigation. The White House determines whether that person should be granted clemency or not. President Trump has taken a big step in that direction already and has appointed the very first clemency czar in Alice Johnson. And she herself was granted clemency for her life sentence for drugs by President Trump, 7 years ago? So she's living proof that it works, and she wants to make it work for others. And I think we're on a path to getting a clemency system that makes more sense. I hope I can rely on that.
Same question, Chad.
You know, I'm going to say this because we're going to keep it real and we're going to keep it raw, right? You know, there are a lot of activists that, you know, obviously help people. Sometimes there's people in this circle where it isn't always about the prisoner. And I just feel like some of the people need to probably, if you're about it, then be about it. You know, I had 40 years at the age of 24, and I had told plenty of people in prison, hey, when I walk out of here, I'm going to be the voice of the voiceless. And I meant that. You know, there are some people that may not agree with me, or some people might not like some of the things that I've done or that I do. But one thing that I do is I make things happen. Under Obama, I was able to get some people released under Obama. One of the guys who I'm going to bring on my YouTube channel, he actually was getting high with a senator's daughter. She overdosed. I told him, I don't think we're going to be able to get you out. Well, I was able to get him out of prison. Jimmy Romans. I'm the person that contacted Alice Johnson. I wrote Jimmy Romans' petition. And I let them know, hey, this is my partner. I've been helping you guys. Help me. This dude needs to get out. And he ended up getting out.
And Jimmy had a life sentence for marijuana?
Jimmy had a life sentence for marijuana. I'd walk the yard with Jimmy every day, and I was like, look, you're going to get out. I'm going to be stuck here. And then it didn't go that way. I got out. And Jimmy didn't get out. And I said, hey, I'm going to walk out here. I'm going to get you out of here, man. He was my partner. He was my best friend in prison. So I was able to do that. Right now, and this isn't about me, it's about the people.
100%.
I was able to help 25 people get clemency under Biden. 8 of them had life sentences. One of them actually had some violence in there, had a murder in that case. But whenever you put a clemency petition together, I think that it should always have pictures of your family plan. Let them know that you have people that love you, care about you. They're going to help you with a successful reentry back into society. And then, yeah, of course, you have to get people's attention. You know, a lot of people don't really realize this about President Trump, right? And I'm not like this Trump defender, but if it wasn't for Trump, I wouldn't be here right now. You know, he passed the First Step Act. He is the president that did the biggest part of criminal justice reform in the country. He did more than Obama. He did more than Biden. And I just think that with Trump, when he appointed Alice, obviously, he gave her clemency. Then he pardoned her. He pardoned Weldon. And he pretty much said, I want you to find people just like you that deserve to get out. And I do believe that there's going to be thousands and thousands of people that get out under this administration. Obviously, Elizabeth Warren's no longer there. You know, that may be a good thing. Some people might not agree with that, but that may be a good thing because you had them there for 4 years. What did they really do? Tell me what they did. There should have been thousands and thousands and thousands of people that got out. Honestly, and with my story, there's people that deserve to get out more than me. Frank Rogers, I did Frank's clemency petition. Ishmael Lara, I wrote that petition. Frank Rogers is a guy from Syracuse, New York, so people can understand the system. He had some petty felonies in the past. He gets a career offender enhancement, and they bang him for the weed. They give him, what, 200 and almost 20 years, right? I think Frank's, what, 220?
19 years.
So Frank gets this big sentence, right? But if he was sentenced today, Frank would only have 9 years. I did Frank's compassionate release, and this is what it comes down to. It comes down to the judge. and the judge says, you know what? I don't like this guy.
Yeah.
I don't care if he'd only have 9 years now. And Frank's been in prison like 14 years. I walk the yard with this dude every day for 4 or 5 years in Raybrook. Like, these people deserve.
And I'd like to bring up Frank's district, Syracuse, New York. We got Dijon here too. It seems real vicious up there. We got Mickey Woods with a life sentence out of Syracuse. Got Frank, got all that time. He got a life sentence out of Syracuse.
I'm out of Rochester, Western District of New York. I was 24 years old, sentenced to 40 years. Definitely deserve to go to prison. Not always a nice guy. Just being straight up with you, like I said, there's people that deserve to get out more than me. Former gang member, involved in, you know, some real serious stuff in prison, violent stuff in USP Big Sandy, USP Pollock. Doesn't make me a tough guy. I'm only telling you that because these dudes probably deserve to get out more than I deserve to get out. I've been home now 4.5 years, remarried the girl that I was married to, 2 twin boys. I have a really big YouTube channel designed to save kids from life imprisonment, premature death in the streets through our stories and experiences. I own the reentry house. I own a paralegal company.
You're off probation now?
Yeah, my judge called me to his chambers and said, I want to talk to you. Bring your wife with you and bring your kids. And I went there, and
Let you off.
who would ever think you'd be in the federal judge's chambers and walking into the federal building, going around that county jail? I always get shaky. Even to this day, I still get like, oh, wow, you know what? But I went there and he said, look, I'm gonna let you off. You did what I asked you to do. You're the first compassionate release that I granted. Keep your word with me. And he let me out on compassionate release.
Okay, so Paul, the question was, for you, what does the clemency process look like, start to finish, and what are the challenges of this that most people run into?
The only thing I could add to the 2 guys before me here is that when you put in a clemency petition, the most important thing, in my opinion, is that you have other groups of people writing letters or going, seeing somebody that knows somebody that can go in and do something. In my own case, Beth Curtis got me out and 21 other guys. She went around and talked to everybody, bugged everybody, saw them again and again and again. I love her. I mean, we live together, but well, I'm very lucky, you know.
Heck yeah.
I did 25 years, 4 months, and I've been out 5 years, and every day is just a wonderful thing. So anyway, back to the point here. I'm very fortunate that I was also able to get a lot of people out of prison. Unfortunately, it stopped about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I was very fortunate before that. Got at least 100 years off from some people. But anyway, that's it.
Okay, so this next question is for Craig and Paul. Having received clemency yourself, what advice do you have for those currently incarcerated pursuing clemency?
The number one thing that the Trump administration, Drew Ivanka, told me of the reason my clemency petition was granted is they felt that based on my petition, I would do well if I was released to the street. And even under Liz Oyer and others that are in the clemency arena, the one thing that they've always stressed is more than arguing that I deserve clemency because my sentence is wrong. That applies to virtually everybody in federal prison. But what is important is if you convince the people reviewing the clemency petition that you have the capability to do well if you hit the street, you have a place to live, you have somewhere to work or, you know, some means of supporting yourself. You have, you know, strength amongst people that are supporting you, friends and family and community. These are the important things that lead to a successful release from prison. I was lucky. I got out of prison blessed by family members and friends that from the get-go made sure I had what I needed, the guidance I needed, and just simple things. I got out of prison after all that time. I had never seen a laptop computer. I had never seen what Facebook is or Google or anything like that. I had never seen a parking meter that you didn't put in a coin and turn the knob. I mean, everything had changed. Grocery stores didn't take cash anymore. Walmart sold food. I mean, everything. So everything changed. And that's where all those friends came in to help me in my ability to get back out on the street, to try to figure out why you don't use a Rand McNally atlas to find your way across town anymore. You use a telephone. Who could imagine that? But that came from everybody in that guidance to help me get on my feet again. And that's why since prison, I'm thriving. I'm actively employed. I'm now a homeowner again. I'm living a life that, you know, that makes the president proud that he released me, that I'm better off on the street than being that guy that the taxpayers keep paying to keep in prison.
I totally agree. So what advice do you have for prisoners that are inside pursuing clemency right now, Paul?
Well, don't take the most expensive person around. And just get organizations, have somebody go to every organization you can think of. There's lists of them. Religious organizations, any kind of, get them to write a letter, and a lot of them do. I had all sorts of people that I never knew that went to bat for me and recommended I get out. Got out, here I am.
Well, we're glad you're out.
How about when first time you saw those new billboards that all light up and stuff?
All right, this next question's for Chad, starting with Chad. Chad, since you've been home, you've had a paralegal business. You've helped many people navigate the first step back. What parts of the law have had the greatest impact so far? And are there ways the first step back still falls short, especially for nonviolent cannabis prisoners?
So, let me just touch on this as far as the first step back goes, right? Obviously the biggest criminal justice reform package that we've ever had. And I'm going to give you some examples outside of maybe the cannabis stuff. I mean, guys like Frank, obviously. Under 21 U.S.C. 851, if you had a prior drug felony, your mandatory minimum was 20 years. If you had 2 priors, then your mandatory minimum was life. And, I had this guy named Billy Brown out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I was in USP Coleman with Billy. And Billy got caught with, I think, 7 dime bags of crack, right? Not the best family upbringing, selling crack when he's 17 years old. 20 years old, he gets caught with an 8-ball, 3.5 grams of crack. And then he gets involved in this 50-gram crack cocaine conspiracy. And the lawyer tells him, public defender, right? But not all public defenders are bad. I've worked with some really good ones, especially in New York. Public defender says, look, Billy, you got to cop out. Billy's mandatory minimum is life. Why would Billy plead guilty? Billy pleads guilty to a life sentence at 24 years old. I ended up helping him. He ends up getting clemency under Obama, right? But the First Step Act changed that. They said, hey, look, this is wrong. 924C offenders. I was 24 years old, sentenced to 40 years at 24.
Parker Coleman, 924C.
But we'll get into that, right? And hopefully someone gets some attention on Parker and Parker gets out of jail. 924C, first gun, and some people are like, oh, you're a gun offender. First gun's 5 years, second gun's 25 years, next one's 25, and they just start stacking them on, right? So you have young guys like Jamel Azelis write articles about him in Criminal Legal News all the time. He does some robberies, right? He ends up with 155 years. Can't get out of jail. No one has the authority. The judge says, hey, I want to let this guy out. And the prosecutor says, no, we're not letting him out. We're not going to just let him die in prison. Eventually he gets out. Why? Because of the First Step Act, right? They reduced the second 25-year sentence down to 5. So now they can still stack them, but it's 5, 5, 5, 5. But under the First Step Act and compassionate release, what happens? It now gives the judge the authority to say, you know what? I'm the judge. I have the power. I think that you're rehabilitated, and I want to give you a shot. That was the same situation with me. I was sentenced to 40 years, 5 for just so you guys know, I got 5 years for a 12-gauge shotgun that was in a house. It's horrible, right? I was a crack dealer, straight up. 5 years for a 12-gauge shotgun, 25 years for a 22 rifle, and 10 years for the crack. The First Step Act didn't make this retroactive. Who does it affect? Let's just keep it real. Disproportionately affects African Americans, right? The gun charges with the crack destroys lives. These guys are never getting out. These kids are growing up without a father figure in the house. And there's plenty of people, that deserve to get out. Like I said, Parker Coleman deserved to get out of prison. So it changes that. And now gives the judges the authority to say, hey, look, I think you're rehabilitated. I'm going to do this. But they didn't want to make it retroactive. If it's wrong for the guys that are coming in, then it has to always be wrong.
So that's what needs to be fixed.
100%. Needs to
Retroactive.
be made retroactive, especially under this administration, right? You know, they want to save money. You're over incarcerating people that are rehabilitated. Parker Coleman, rehabilitated. Frank Rogers, rehabilitated. These are dudes that are probably going to get out of prison and not reoffend. And here's an example. Thank God I'm out here. I've been out here almost 5 years. I had 3 separate hearings on my compassionate release. I mean, the prosecutors were vicious, and I had John Gleason represent me, former federal judge, the guy that did the Holloway case. He came with it. I seen what real lawyers were when they came from New York City. These were real lawyers. He has the First Step Back program with the 924C stacking. But these prosecutors fought me. They had SIS come testify on me. He's a gang member. They made me take all my clothes off and take pictures of all my tattoos. And they painted this narrative. Like, this guy's a gang member. This dude was a shot caller in prison. He doesn't deserve to get out of prison. And my judge responds with a 50-page decision and says, the prosecution has lied. They worked with SIS at the prison to lie. But the moral of the story is that people do get out of prison, especially dudes that done a lot of time. Those are the dudes that get out of prison, and I really believe change their lives.
I did too.
4.5 years. Like I said, I'm married, 2 little twin boys. It hasn't all been a easy path in prison infection. So when I got out, I'm jumpy, I'm nervous. I'm not gonna lie to you. I slept with a knife in my room probably for 15 months. But you know what? If I can do it, and I was that dude that they didn't want, gang member, these dudes can do it.
Yeah.
Parker Coleman can get out and do it. Frank Rogers can do it.
100%. What do you think should be changed on the First Step Act? And how can people navigate it? And what's the greatest impact of the First Step Act?
The greatest impact of the First Step Act, I think, is the most obvious in the prison population. At the end of the Obama administration, there was 219,000 federal prisoners. By the end of the Trump administration, there was 153,000 federal prisoners. Now, why?
Wow.
Why? Now, okay, granted, part of that is COVID slowed down the number of arrests, but that's only a small part of the equation. The First Step Act made it so that there was more early release credits available to people for doing programming in prison. That obviously needs to be expanded. Right now, it only applies to a smaller percentage of federal prisoners. It should apply to every federal prisoner, whether they committed a gun offense, a violent crime, a drug offense, or sadly, the people that all of us former prisoners don't want to defend, the sex offenders. But sadly, the First Step Act needs to be expanded to grant incentives to everybody in prison to better themselves in exchange for early release. Because if they are working to better themselves in prison, I think we can all believe they'll better themselves once they're out of prison.
So you're referring to like doing like classes?
Correct. As you know, that there's classes people can take.
Yep.
And it makes their release earlier. It's not actually good time in words, but in its functional application, it actually is. It gets them out of prison earlier. But that needs to be expanded, I think, to everybody. And also, some of the benefits that people can receive under compassionate relief and others, that ought to be applied to everybody. New law people, old law people,
Yeah.
everybody that's in prison on every charge that ends you up in federal prison.
Since you touched on the old law, will you expand with the people under old law not qualifying? Or
Correct. As Chad talked about, one of the biggest improvements in the First Step Act is it gave judges back the power to look at a person's sentence and determine if their sentence is right or not. That power was taken away back in the early 80s under the Sentencing Reform Act back then, where judges were locked into guidelines and mandatory minimums and things of that sort. Under the new compassionate release program, a prisoner can go right to their judge and ask that judge to look at their sentence and see if their sentence is right. And if the judge doesn't think it's right, they can grant them relief. That is not available to somebody that committed their crime before November of 1987. And those are probably the most reformed people there is, people that have been in prison since then.
40 years almost.
Right, and figure people of those ages are not likely to get out of prison and commit more crimes.
Let me stop you for a second, right? What he's saying is 100% correct. There is one person that did get out that was under the old law on compassionate release. That was Guy Fisher. I don't know if you know.
I've heard that. What was Guy's?
He was the first African American to ever own the Apollo Theater, Manhattan. Nicky Barnes, American Gangster. Guy Fisher is the guy that they all told on, and Guy Fisher ended up with a life sentence. I helped Guy out. Very, very close with Guy. The public defender's office filed it, but
He's home?
He got out, but he was under the old law. And some people are like, oh, well, you know, he tricked them. He got in early. And then you have other guys in Illinois and stuff like that. Like, nope, you're under the old law. Can't let you out of jail. Sorry. And like he said, these are guys that are 65, 70. These are dudes that deserve to get out. They're not committing no more crimes. They've been in prison 30, 40 years. But your tax dollars are paying to over incarcerate them. You know, for, you know, Trump, if you're watching, or Alice, you know, you can fix that because those guys can't get out. But you can definitely do it through clemency.
Anything to add to that, Paul?
No.
All right. So the next question is, what are some of the key legal strategies or loopholes that attorneys and jailhouse lawyers should know when working on compassionate release in clemency cases? Start with you, Chad. Come over to Craig.
I don't want to say like there's loopholes or tricking them, right? It's not about tricking them. And I'll be the first one to tell you, a lot of these lawyers, a lot of these judges, hope this don't get me in trouble, but they're not the smartest people, right? You might think they are because they went to Harvard. They got it all figured out.
They look smart in the
You
courtroom.
even had the attorney general, you know, at one time was like, oh, he was talking to Dick Durbin. He said, oh, well, we did that. We took 2 points off. Well, you were the attorney general. What do you mean you don't know that happened? Are you out of your mind? Like, you're the attorney general. In every compassionate release motion that I do, and I sat on a panel with Judge Prescott. I learned a lot from Judge Prescott in New York. She likes to see pictures. I want to see pictures of the family. I want to see where you're going home to. Are these people going to help you? And I'm going to tell you right now, when they look at those pictures, they look to see, are they presentable people? Like I've done compassionate release motions and dudes will say, I say, hey, I need 10, 15 pictures. And I'm getting pictures where they're like that's not going to work. You know, pictures before your incarceration, you got a beer in your hand. Like, we're not sending that to the judge. That's not going in the photo collage of your reentry plan. But I think, you know, you stick to the law, you stick to the facts, you bang away on the rehabilitation. This is what I've done since I've been in prison. No, you know, obviously 18 U.S.C. 3553A, you know, they're supposed to give you a punishment that's sufficient, but not greater than necessary to achieve the goals of sentencing. So bang away on the rehabilitation. Like, look, I've turned my life around. I'm no longer a threat to public safety. How do you show that? You know, we can go through the programs. I have, you know, stable housing, because I think judges do worry about if you get out and you don't have nowhere to go, what are you going to do? You'll be back, you know, selling drugs. You're going to do whatever it is to survive. And that's just keeping it real. So, you know, employment letters are important. And I learned a lot of this, like I said, from Judge Prescott when I sat on that panel with Sean Hopwood and some people that you probably know. And that's what you do. You really show, you know, and some people think, like, oh, you got to bang away on the case law. The judge knows the law. The judge don't know the facts about you. Paint this picture. And I always put a letter to the judge. Put a very, very, and I tell them, just a compelling letter, man, heartfelt. Tell them how you really feel. I got a partner right now, man, former Aryan Brotherhood gang member, going in front of the judge he gets lucky, he's going to get resentenced. He's on the phone. Man, it came back with a PSI. They want to give me more time than I started with. He started crying. But if you see this dude on Facebook, he's that dude with all the tattoos and, you know, he's on that gangster stuff, but he was crying on the phone. And he's posting pictures on Facebook, like still involved in this gang nonsense. And man, you really want to get out of jail? So focus on the rehabilitation and just be real about it. I mean, that's what I would say.
Same question to you. What's the key strategies on pursuing clemency right now? And what should the incarcerated individuals focus on? And what should their lawyers focus on?
Again, clemency and the compassionate release is convince the arbiter that you're going to do well if released. You are the person that's not going to commit a crime again. You're a person who has the means to do well if you are released to the street. If your plan to go to the street is I'm going to live with my sister in the projects for a while and I'm going to hook up with the homeboys and get my life back together, they're going to leave you in prison. But if you're planning, I'm going to go live with my mom and I have a job offer right over here. And I've got the support from the church. I have the support from my friends in the area. I'm going to be able to get a car from my buddy, you know, so-and-so. I'm going to thrive once I hit the street. I'll live with mom until I'm on my feet to get my own home. Actually have a plan so that when you hit the street, you are going to thrive. You're not just going to be out of prison. You're going to thrive. You're going to be the person that they want to have in their neighborhood, in their community.
Anything to add to that?
No, I'm just glad these gentlemen are still into it.
Heck yeah. I like it. Well, I'm going to wake you.
Tired.
I'm going to wake you up with this one. So in your guys' opinion, what were the key failures of the Biden administration with clemency and rescheduling cannabis? I was disappointed nothing got done. I remember at the debate with Cory Booker, Biden promised he was going to let all the cannabis prisoners released. Now we're into a Trump term. None of the cannabis prisoners got released for cannabis crimes. So let's just go over the failures of the Biden administration. And did they give you guys hope that they were going to let people out? Is people that were talking to the administration? Start with Craig.
Well, of course, the Biden administration, like any other administration, survives off of politics. Biden knew what to say to really make us really encouraged by that administration. He may even cause some of us to vote for him. But sadly, it wasn't realized. He got into office and found that it didn't fit his politics any longer. Then he really got pushed and made that big announcement, almost 3 years ago, that he's going to grant pardons to everybody with a simple possession conviction
Marijuana.
of marijuana only. And we all know what happened with that. Did anybody get out of prison? Is anybody able to go for a job now and say, I no longer have a marijuana conviction? No, those convictions are still standing. Yes, they have a letter from the president saying that, yes, I could have pardoned all the people with that conviction, but there's nothing specific to the individual offender saying they no longer have this conviction. So that, again, was politics right before the election. It came out in October for the November midterm election. That was a politically motivated endeavor by the president that really turned out to be meaningless. We also know there was a lot of talk about moving marijuana to Schedule 3, which, yes, is an improvement if they even did it. But what there was never talk of is moving it out of Section 841. Make it so that 1,000 kilos or more wasn't 10 years to life. That never came up. Why didn't anybody talk about that? Even if they did change it to Schedule 3, our sentences would still remain the same. It's still 10 years to life for 1,000 kilos or more. So that's the reason that failed. The people that would be the movers and shakers to move it to Schedule 3 never saw a reason to. What would it help? Who would it help? What would change? Maybe some schools could do a little bit more research on it. But what would really change as far as the criminal law? So yes, sadly, the Biden administration garnered a lot of votes out of a lot of promises. But sadly, we've been let down by another politician. That when the politics actually hit the fan, that's where it stayed.
We've been here many years.
Give him the mic.
We've been here about 3 or 4 years in a row about this time. And I remember last year, one of the government officials came out and said, "Yay, 420, yeah, we're gonna get him out and legalize it, yeah." And 5 years ago, I came here. When I first got out, I bought a little car, and I was able to have an apartment for a month, and I got a computer and a printer and all that. And I printed up this little brochure to give out, 1 page, double-sided, real pretty for me. I'm tech stupid, but I printed it up and I got out in Detroit, Michigan, and I drove here and I went through at least half of the senators' offices in the House. And I'd walk in, and I had, see, it was kind of a poster like that. But I walked in, and they all, the staffers jump up and go, "Oh, hi, come on in. Hey, Bill, we got a voter out here." And they said, "Well, welcome, come on." And I went to my senator's office first and did that. And I thought, wow, I bet you I could go to the next one. And the next one was from New Mexico. And I walked in there and, "Hi, come on in." I went in and I gave him the brochure and everything. And he said, "Would you like some Halloween candy?" "No, thanks." And this guy was from New Mexico. So when I first walked in and saw everybody, I said, I just recently drove through Albuquerque, and which was kind of true about 20, 30 years earlier. Anyway, got the same thing. "Yeah, you'd be surprised how many phone calls we get every day on this issue. We're going to help legalize marijuana. We're going to try and get these people out." And I walked out going, "Well, it'd be nice." That was 5 years ago. So,
You've done nothing.
yeah.
Failures of the Biden administration, Chad.
So when you talk about simple possession, right? I mean, everybody has someone that's in jail, right? How many people are in federal prison for simple possession of marijuana? None. We're going to pardon everybody in federal prison for simple possession. This is what Biden told the people, right? But Parker's not in jail for simple possession. Frank Rogers isn't. Ishmael isn't. It's all a lie. What are their failures? You know what their failures are. You don't need me to tell you, but I'll tell you anyway. Thousands and thousands of people should have got clemency under Biden, right? They wanted people to believe that the public's not going to go nuts if you release marijuana offenders, right? Nonviolent drug offenders. Tax dollars are paying to incarcerate these people. Why are they still in prison? No violence. It should have been a blanket pardon. Everybody was ready, right? Biden's last day, here it goes. It's going to happen. I was fortunate to get some dudes out that is crazy. And Frank went nuts over this because I've done some stuff for Frank, had some stuff delivered to DC for Frank. I got dudes out that killed. I got this dude out that killed his wife in his case. I did his clemency petition at the same time I did Frank's. I'm glad this dude got out. He's got 30 years in, but Frank probably should have got out before Bloomer did. That's their failure. There's guys where there's a guy from Connecticut. I believe in second chances 100%. This dude executed a woman and her 2 kids because they were going to be a witness. He got clemency. Parker didn't. Frank Rogers didn't.
No violence on Parker.
This is a case out of Connecticut. You can Google it. This guy killed 2 kids and a woman because the woman was going to testify at his brother's trial. He got clemency under Biden. These marijuana offenders didn't. So that's their biggest failure. And there's other things that piss me off, but where some people, Harry O got out of prison, but Michelle West was still sitting in prison. I mean, she got out now, but sometimes, so all the people know, like, we're not, I'm not here for money, and I'm not here to put up a post and say, I was at the White House, or I was with this dude, or I was with that dude. I really do care about people. There's a lot of people in this circle that don't necessarily care about people.
You're
right?
good, Paul.
And as far as politics go, it should be people over politics. Michelle West should have got out of prison way before Harry O got out of prison. I'm glad he got out. Maybe they all should have got out at the same time.
Okay. So the last question, we'll wrap up with this. I know we all have great hope with the appointment of the pardon czar, Alice Marie Johnson. She was a former incarcerated individual like ourselves. What criteria do you think the administration should put forward as far as letting people out on clemency? And what are you hoping to see out of this new administration as far as actual releases? And is there any thoughts on what we can expect?
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so Alice Johnson's got the seat, right? Maybe she'll see this. Everybody's like, hey, I got the number. Hey, call Alice. I've spoken to Alice before when Alice got out of prison. The biggest thing is this. Alice Johnson, don't forget where you were at. Don't forget what it's like to have a life sentence. Yeah, you're in that position now. You got a couple dollars. You got all these people around you. You're doing big things. But don't forget about the people. Don't forget about what it was like to go to bed hungry at night. Because I'm sure she went to bed hungry sometimes.
How much time did she do?
20 years? What else? 20?
Oh, she hasn't forgotten.
Yeah.
She hasn't forgotten.
Well, hopefully she has. Hopefully she has.
She hasn't.
Well, we're about to find out.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people want to, cater to these people, but I don't do that because I got a couple of hours.
We're all very hopeful. I didn't see a Biden appoint anybody that was incarcerated.
No, of course not. And look, I'm a Trump supporter, right? Why am I a Trump supporter? I don't like everything that he says, everything that he does, but I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the First Step Act.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in life if it wasn't for compassionate release. Many of my friends wouldn't be out of prison. So when he appointed her as the pardon czar, of course I'm happy. Former prisoner, don't forget. If you want the real answers, I'm here to give them to you.
Yeah.
I'm here to give them to you.
What?
You don't want to piss no one off, right?
Well,
I
I
want people to get out
think
of
it's
jail.
I think she hasn't even settled into the office, and I think that I'm super excited. What do you?
I agree. I think she's emblematic of this administration taking a new approach to clemency, as they did in my case and not running it through the Department of Justice in his first term. But in the second term under this administration, I think and I'm hopeful that we're going to see changes in how clemency is considered by the executive branch of our government. I'm hoping that they will look at, is this person going to be the person that Americans want in their community? Is this the person that would thrive more out of prison than in prison? And I think that that's what Alice may be emblematic of, is this administration saying we're going to change how we do look at clemency and whether to grant it or not to grant it. And that's where my hopes are. And yes, we don't know. Is she going to get caught up in the system of a lot of money, a lot of fame, and a lot of fancy hotels and trips and all that? Or is she going to help lead the fight to a new regime of using presidential power to make wrongful sentences right? That's our hope. So right now, there's no guarantees. There's no, everybody's talking about what they heard, somewhere. But there's no guarantees right now. But we need to be loud enough to make sure that these people, including Alice, know we're watching what they're doing, and especially what they may not be doing. So let's make sure that they hear us and that we can make a difference from here.
Thanks, Craig, for keeping it real. Appreciate that. Because that's what it is.
Yeah, you're right. People are in prison. We need them out. Anything closing, Paul?
No, I'm with y'all. Let's get them out. It's about time.
Any closing, Chad?
Man, that's,
Sign. Oh, we want you guys to sign the letter asking Trump to release these guys behind us.
I just think, in my closing is pretty much, I do believe, sometimes there's, this stuff about Trump, but I do believe obviously that he's done a bunch of big things. Like I said, I wouldn't be
Ross
here.
Albright, he let out a few people.
Well, I mean, he's letting out silver, but he's been doing that with a lot of people that people don't even realize. There was clemencies like 2 weeks ago. He is doing some stuff, right? And with Alice there and with what he said, he says, hey, look, find me some people that are just like you that deserve to get out. I mean, there's thousands of them.
Oh, yeah.
Do I believe it's going to happen? I do. You're more closely connected with her. They got a little bit mad at me when I was harping on them about getting my boy out. I mean, it kind of ruined my relationship with them, but it don't matter because my boy got out of jail. So it is what it is. I don't bullshit. I give it to you how it is.
It's an intense feeling advocating for people in prison. That's for sure. Any closing remarks?
No, just again, that theme of hope.
Yeah.
I hope that we can be the push behind making that change happen. Because President Trump went out on a limb, releasing 11 people sentenced to life for marijuana on his last half day in office. He took a gamble on us. There's 3 of us of that 11 here today. All of us gainfully employed. All of us getting along with our neighbors and our neighborhoods that are happy to have us. All of us doing well. We're living proof that this works. And now, hopefully, we're giving that hope to the administration that if it worked for us, that this administration can make it work for many thousands of more that really should have some relief and are languishing in our prisons for no reason.
Trump already let some people out last time.
Hope he does it again. All right, thanks, guys.
If he does it again.
Next panel will be in 15 minutes.